Ancient Polynesians were experienced at harnessing the power of nature to help them in their quest to inhabit the vast expanse of the Pacific. Driven by the need to escape famine, food shortages, war, family disputes, the wind, the sun, the currents became forces that spurred them on. But once they had found new land and abundance, the skills and experience acquired for ocean navigation and travel were no longer needed and were lost along the generations. New circumstances, the increasing vulnerability to rising sea levels and frequently occurring and vicious natural disasters, the increasing cost of and accessibility to imported fuel, the increasing fragility of our surrounding environment has led the Polynesians of the Cook Islands to rediscover the past, but to harness it in a new way to create a balance that would benefit it both environmentally and economically.
Before coming into office in November 2010, I was a contented and healthy pearl farmer on my island of Maneki. I absolutely loved it. The lifestyle, the people, the simplicity of life, the fact my daily office was out in the blue and pristine lagoon of Maneki. But life there also had, and still has, its challenges. Some can be controlled, others not. One of those we can control is the cost and supply of fuel. More importantly, our dependence on fuel.
With the Prime Minister in the driver's seat, the Cook Islands has stepped on the renewable energy accelerator and set a 50% renewable energy target by 2015 and 100% by 2020.
Ambitious? Yes. Impossible? No. We Cook Islanders are born environmentalists. Our traditional practices handed down from our forefathers relating to the use of our land and our ocean are all designed to maximize the sustainable use of these limited resources the good Lord has blessed us with. Besides, our smallness in terms of our size and population are huge advantages.
And promote his vision he has, every official speech the Prime Minister has made has included his vision for a green Cook Islands. The top-down approach has a wide-ranging impact, with many government departments and organisations realigning themselves to go green, and in such a short span of time that the general population have no doubt that the vision is possible.
Green, green, green! Go, go, go!
The technology for renewable energy is in place. New and improved solutions are being developed all the time, and we have willing development partners to help us.
So on the successful project management checklist, champion checked, clear, achievable target promoted and communicated widely checked, restructuring and realigning of existing energy entities checked. In April 2011, in line with the Prime Minister's vision, a new department called the Renewable Energy Development Department was created. The main objective of this office was to set up the framework for all renewable energy activities for the country. The Prime Minister also requested Te Apungawira, the capital Raratonga's electricity supplier, to oversee the rollout of all renewable energy projects for the country. Frameworks, policies, action plans, strategic plans, they're nothing new to the Cook Islands. In fact, we have several of them, none of which are living documents. but all government spending and direction is guided by one document, that National Sustainable Development Plan. Energy falls under Goal 5 of the NSDP's A Strong Basic Infrastructure Base to Support National Development. Government's goals will be achieved using proven technologies, and its policy, legislative and regulatory frameworks and institutional support will be strengthened. This includes the outdated Energy Act 1998, which focuses mainly on electrical safety and licensing. Renewable energy, energy efficiency, energy conservation and climate change are priority areas for government. The Cook Islands relies almost completely on diesel for energy production. In the capital Rarotonga, where at least 70% of the population resides, the installed capacity is 10.4 megawatts, with demand at about 4.2 megawatts. The annual growth rate was 5% throughout the 2000s. Nearly every home in the Cook Islands has electricity, the majority of which are from the island's grids, while the odd household like those in Rarotonga's interior or on the Pearl Islets in the middle of Manihiki Lagoon employs some sort of energy self-generation. While Rarotonga very rarely suffers from fuel shortages, this is not true for the outer islands.
Over the years I've been here, I've experienced about 5 or 6 times of rationing.
This is where the island has run short of fuel due to irregular shipping and have had to ration the fuel by limiting the number of operating hours, usually switching off during the sleeping hours, as well as borrowing diesel from anyone who can spare some.
You could say, well, we should buy more fuel, but you're a bit limited how much fuel you can buy, because the shipping capacity is limited, the amount of funding that the island administrations has got is limited, so they just don't have a blank cheque to be able to order as much fuel as they like.
I'm not willing to accept that this is the way it is and the way it always will be. We know that Tayo shipping is down one vessel, so what do we do about it? It's about time we start planning and monitoring our diesel supply more consistently.
Mangaya Island has resorted to monitoring of its fuel supply and placing triggers to set off alarms when certain levels are reached to indicate a time for ordering a new supply and a time to start rationing. Unfortunately, asking the island to reduce its consumption impacts their quality of life.
The people can survive if the power shut down, but it's sad to see that the freezers that store the frozen goods for the people that last them through months, it will spoil the foods. These are the things that really hurt us. When the gas is short as well on the island, that will affect the energy supply, because what else do the people do? If it rains, you can't exactly go out and light an open fire.
Perhaps the focus of the Cook Islands has been distracted for a while. The democratic government, which was in power for most of the 2000s, wanted to lower the cost of energy to the people by buying the tank farms and contracting out the distribution. This was an attempt to consolidate the whole national supply, dubbed the Toagate, a nice idea that was implemented very wrongly and had the opposite effect, slapping a $10 million bill on the public purse. The Henry Puna government has the same goal, but achieved by different means, that of substituting fossil fuels with the cleaner renewable alternatives, but it has meant playing catch-up. In the RE race of the Pacific, the Cook Islands is at the tailing end.
We are behind in terms of energy, renewable energy, consumption. I think we right at the back. but our target is far more higher than the other Pacific regions. At the moment, it's very hard for us to say that what percentage are we using for renewable energy. I read the report about 2008. At the moment, we say that we are only using 3% from renewable energy sources.
The lack of information will be rectified in the 2011 national census.
And that the outcome of that will give government, or will give us where we are in terms of our renewable energy usage, and also our demand as a nation, plus which sector consumes the most energy. Because at the moment we're just guessing. It's just a guesswork.
Only the interest in renewable energy is new, but the Cook Islands has employed renewable energy for near on 30 years. Solar energy was used experimentally in the 1980s to power the now derelict PSAT HF communications facility. Stuart Kingan, who operated the PSAT, even ran a small yellow electric car. In the first half of the 1990s, monopoly telecommunications provider Telecom Cook Islands rolled out solar-powered satellite Earth stations and UHF stations on the 11 inhabited outer islands of the Cook Islands. This was necessary as most islands had and still have an irregular power supply. Telecom employed battery storage for 2 to 10 days depending on the remoteness of the island. Around the same time, a Cook Islands government project saw the installation of solar PVs on 110 homes on the remote island of Puka Puka. These are no longer used as the batteries are no longer effective and the island now has a diesel generator. But the solar panels still line the roofs, although some were destroyed when the island was struck by Cyclone Olaf in 2005. Since the 1990s, numerous feasibility studies of the Cook Islands resources have been conducted. These have indicated favourable resources for suitable energy generation and supply. The Ministry of Works has conducted some studies, and hydro has the potential to generate several hundred kilowatts of power, but development costs are inhibitive. A Norwegian company through SOPAC recorded the wave energy potential at 23 to 28 kilowatts per metre, but the technology is still experimental. Local scientist Tom Wichman has shown the operation of a small power plant from coconut oil, but with 10 coconuts needed to produce 1 litre of coconut oil, this is not a sustainable resource. The most promising resources as per studies by the Energy Division and the Forum Secretariat are sun and wind. Sun hours are on average 5.5 hours per day, while wind speed is approximately 6 to 7 meters per second in certain places. As the Cook Islands embarks into the green ages, it may be useful for it to take a moment to reflect on its overall past experiences, but in particular to look at the successes and lessons learnt from the Mangaya Wind Project, a pilot RE project. The oldest island in the Pacific, second largest of the Cook Islands, but with a population of only 5% that of Rarotonga, Mangaya became the victim of Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will. Mechanical and electrical failures, communications issues, maintenance and funding issues, support and ownership problems, Mangaya had it all. Set up by the South Pacific Commission, the Pacific Renewable Energy Project, funded by France and Australia, or PREFACE, chose Mangaya as one of 3 sites for pilot projects.
Mainly, according to the locations, the further you away from the grid, from the equator, there's more wind. So they look at a potential for Mangaya.
Not only is Mangaya one of the most southern islands in the South Pacific, it is close to one of the islands of the Austral group in French Polynesia that operated wind technology, so an ideal location. For the island of Mangaya, it was an exciting opportunity.
We'd never had anything like that before, and we felt quite happy that Mangaya was chosen to have the first wind turbine in the Cook Islands.
The chiefs of the island were supportive because they could see a benefit for the people, so they offered a choice of land. The major considerations were accessibility, space for the guy wires and to lay the tower down, proximity to the town for noise and safety reasons, proximity to the sea due to corrosion issues, and proximity to the power station or grid.
Because our turbines are located in a graveyard, so we had to position it in such a way that we completely missed all the existing grave sites.
Perfect. Perfect. One more. Perfect.
As would be expected, wind resources were monitored for several months.
The data we collected, we couldn't make head or tails of it, so we had to send that data off to others who would then correlate it. In the end, we discovered that it was supposedly 7 metres per second was the average wind speed.
7 meters per second, the minimum speed needed to operate these turbines. From then on, the project was set in motion. The funds were already approved, the project documents just had to be prepared, and the process started.
But what happened, the company who did the design, the proposals, the company want the supply of the equipment and the installation.
Although the general feeling of those familiar with this project is that this is not a good thing and a contributing factor to its eventual demise, it is not uncommon for projects to be offered as design, supply and install. In fact, many large companies have the ability to offer an entire solution. There were only 2 bidders for the supply and install. SPC made the selection. The company was French, resulting immediately in language barriers.
After we got going through the project, it did take us a little while to fathom out how it all worked, because most of the documents were in French. But we solved that also by having, on the laptop, we had a dictionary that changed the words from French to English so that we could type to each other and work out what we were talking about.
And as there was no expertise in the country for wind installations, no one could tell whether things were being done correctly.
But as far as the actual project goes, because we hadn't done one like this before, we weren't to know what it was that we were not, what was missing, you see. This was the first one like this. And I believe also the group from Rarotonga who were involved, it was their first one like this. So they also weren't aware of the shortfalls. I think it was just a lack of knowledge in that area.
But while the technical expertise did not exist, there was no reason for poor administration. Administrative issues appeared to have been overlooked even when the bills started to roll in for the land clearing.
So we spent thousands of litres of fuel up there with all sorts of machines to make it all happen. That was a point that I noticed. that should have been included. Unfortunately, we didn't have any extra funding for that. It wasn't allowed for in our budget, so we had to cover the costs ourselves.
Despite the language barriers, the installation went off without a hitch. But after 6 months of successful operation, the propellers fell off, signalling the start of all their problems.
And that was quite scary, with the whole nose cone and the propellers, the whole lot just dropped off on one day.
Immediately, you'd assume that a bolt was loose or something.
Every so often a blade would go flying off. Generally they'd travel about 100 metres and land about 100 metres away. If we were lucky, the blade would land and not break, and we could rebuild it. I lost a couple of blades that way.
The project became very high maintenance, requiring frequent and exhaustive visits.
The cable, the little cable inside that was the output of the power, that used to cause us a lot of issues. We had that burn out a few times. Twisted so tight they just short out. You had to consistently undo that. If you missed like 2 or 3 days not going there to do that, you'd be guaranteed that this thing would be in a twisted anaconda ready to short out and blow up again. So that was an issue as well. Every time the power went off, this system would shut off and it would stay off. It wouldn't come back online. So we'd have to go back up there and reset it all, and then it would come back online. The theory was during cyclones or strong winds, you'd be able to get yourself up there and lower the tower down within half an hour or something. Well, that never proved to be the case, because during strong winds or cyclones, often the road was so wet you couldn't get up there to start with. If you did get up there, it was so muddy that there was no way that you could move your equipment around. And if by some chance you did manage to get all that up and going, the last thing you wanted to be was up there trying to stop it, because the brake didn't work. So this thing would just keep spinning away, and you could never stop it. And you can't lower the tower down until you've stopped the turbine spinning around, the blades. So it was kind of self-perpetuating disaster. You'd never stop it in a million years. Generally, after it had been raining a fair bit, then the control system up there was highly sensitive to moisture. So it would shut off as well. So the system would shut off. You'd have to wait for a week or so, leave the doors open and let the sun dry it all out. Every so often you'd have an issue with the way the gearbox worked, because the bearing would just not seat properly inside the cast iron. It was worn, so I just had to write that tower off in the end. We couldn't reuse it. The propellers had a pitting problem. That was one of the issues with the actual blades themselves. They tended to wear out a lot, and you'd have to constantly put epoxy resin over the blades to keep them in some sort of shape, because otherwise it started eating away the fiberglass. We'd have to go up there at least every week to check things. You couldn't leave it for any longer than that. But dropping the tower down, we'd have to do that, nearly every month for some other reason. Something else was going wrong.
Problem after problem, Mangaya was left to fend for themselves. No expertise, no extra funds, and no real support from anyone.
We're supposed to keep in track with this project. The problem I see over here, because there wasn't anyone in the office identified to manage, coordinate this project. In the first place, I thought I was geared up to manage this project, but when it comes to the installation part, I was left out of the project. And it before the wind monitoring, the site preparation, I was in Mangaya for the site preparation, this and that. And then when it comes to the installation, the hookup, and commissioning of the project, I was left out. So I didn't follow the until the propeller broke down. So I think that's one of the main downfall of this project is from our office.
So Mangaya was like a ball tossed from partner to partner.
We didn't have any money in our budget here in the island administration budget to cover any of these costs. And the issue was who was responsible for covering it. After a lot of arguing, it seemed, it didn't go easily. Vernay eventually agreed to fund the repairs to that by sending over, they sent one of their engineers again. They sent some more propellers because the propellers had broken. And that took quite a few months before all that arrived and we got that part all back together. But there was a lot of uneasiness about who was supposed to be responsible for this. The people in Rarotonga and the energy, I had a feeling it should have been responsible, but it seemed as if really we had to kind of deal with Vernay directly. So I guess it was a bit blurry on whether the project was island administrations or whether it was still under the banner of Cook Island government or
Okay, we tried to get the company back and come back and look at the problem, but it was hard for us to get in touch with the company. It's not supposed to be us. It's supposed to be SPC. They are supposed to get the company because I'll say the contract is between us and SPC.
I have a feeling what happened was the pre-phase system, their funding had run out, so they had dissolved. They had disappeared. Okay. So the actual people who implemented the project, were no longer around. So it did get a bit blurry. We didn't quite know who was supposed to be the lead project person.
And luckily there's one guy, one of the bidders of the job, was doing a power study in the Cook Islands, and he managed to flow over to Mangaya, never look at the what do you call the metals, look at the propeller, and because he's an engineer, and his recommendation and why the thing broke down, and he said it's an old machine or a second-hand machine, a reconditioned machine, and also the metal that they used is not the right metal, and so that's why the thing cracked and the propeller fell down. It was, I say, about 6 months for us to wait for the company to come back, and then they eventually got to Mangaya, and they look at look at the problems, and then they wrote a report that they're going to replace it. And the problem is they don't manufacture that size anymore, so they have to look for another similar turbine. We even went as far as getting some extra funds to buy some spare parts for the project, to rehab this project in Mangaya. We didn't have any luck.
So relationships soured and action by the partners continued, but Mangaya persevered. On the 6th May 2011, 6 years on, one of the blades of the last turbine snapped off, marking the end to the life of the project. For several years, RE was high on the Te Apunga Wira agenda. In 2006 and 7, a watt was about $15 to $20, which made RE more expensive than the conventional diesel system.
We did the economics, it just wasn't gonna justify it. You know, our mandate requires us to invest only in things that are economical. Okay, so but the discussion continued, you know, and the business planning of 2009, the board was quite serious about it. They say, hey, look, if we can't fund it, there must be another way. And they say, well, okay, maybe we can encourage the private sector or the private citizens to invest. And then that's how the net metering idea was born.
Net metering applies when you produce your own RE power. You're basically credited for any excess electricity that you feed back into the grid. You are able to draw on this credit when you can't generate your own electricity, like at night for solar installations.
November 2009, that's when it was formalized. The uptake was very slow, understandable. You know, you got to fork out, at least if you're serious about it, you need to fork out at least $30,000 for it to be a worthwhile thing. And that money is not out there, you know, nobody has that kind of money. So it took, I think, almost a year. Then we started to see, you know, the uptake. Now we have about 40 installations out there, and the interest is actually quite high. There's a lot of people now, you know, putting their hand up, forking out money, and yeah, so it's been a success in that respect. Yeah.
But while Te Apunga Wira net metering customers ultimately get a smaller bill, and the environment benefits from the reduction in CO2 emissions, Te Apunga Wira has to absorb the lost revenue. There aren't that many large companies on Rarotonga, so one only needs to perform some simple mathematics to work out that if they all follow in the lead of the biggest retail outlet on Rarotonga, that has spent almost $1 million on RE technology, Te Apunga Wira has some serious issues.
Now, we put a 10 kilowatt limit to that. There's a reason behind that, because no, there is a technical constraint on the system, and you know, 20% is the threshold that's being used worldwide, and in our case, that's equivalent to 600 kilowatt. And now, if we don't have put a limit, you could have the man with the most money out there, you know, installing as much as he can to generate. Now, the benefit in that case is restricted to that person, but it's going to be a cost to the rest of the consumers. TOW was prepared to absorb that loss up to that level. Because we did the sums, you know, it's yeah, we forgo some income.
But those sorts of limitations, in effect, prevents the Cook Islands from achieving its 50 and 100% targets. So any producer exceeding the Te Apunga Wira limit fall into another category, an independent power producer.
We will have to sit with you to agree on a rate. Because obviously, because net metering is the same. We don't make any money in real business. You can't sell the product at the same price you're buying it for. So about 10 kilowatt, the provision there is independent power producer. So we talk rates.
In effect, Te Apunga Wira is competing with the public for its existence, but it is not phased. Especially now that it is tasked by government with playing the lead role in rolling out RE.
Well, I mean, we need to recognize, you know, the renewable thing is not about TOW. It's about the country, it's about the customers. The current model, obviously, is TOW is the producer and distributor of electricity. But this whole renewable thing is not about TOW, so electricity is not about TOW. We could be looking at a totally different model of producing electricity options. We need to be open-minded. We should not try and come up with a model that retains the existing practice, because that may not be the feasible model.
Models. That is exactly what is needed for the Cook Islands to achieve its vision. Currently, it has good sun and wind resources. Solar in particular is favoured.
But I can envisage 60 or 70% of the renewable energy being solar for the Cook Islands. It's got no moving parts, it's easy to maintain, it has a 25-year design life, and panels frequently last very much longer than 25 years. It's something that people understand, it's quiet, and it doesn't have the same site restrictions that wind does.